Good afternoon. My name is John Tierpak, Executive Director of the Unemployment Law Project. I'm here with Ann Paxson, the ULP Policy Director. Um, Unemployment Law Project is a nonprofit law office. We provide advice and representation for people in Washington state who have their benefits challenged. We have represented hundreds of people last year in hearings, and will represent many more in the coming year. We have offices both in Spokane and in Seattle. Today, we will begin with an update from Ann Paxson on some recent issues, followed by some questions and answers. Feel free to post your questions in the Q&A, and we will get to them when time comes. So Ann, could you go ahead?
Thank you, John, and welcome everyone to our weekly webinar. We are going on a year of doing these now, so we're getting to know a lot of the participants and really enjoy getting a chance to update people every week. So this week, I wanted to mention three kind of major areas, that some developments that are happening in state unemployment benefits policy, some changes in federal policy that will be affecting a lot of claimants very soon, and sort of the national news to give a context for what's happening with unemployment and rehiring, reemployment, and how the effect that that's having on some benefit programs. So to start out, first to mention our bill, the bill that we worked on that we heavily promoted with the legislature, and luckily we're able to see pass both houses, both chambers of the Washington State Legislature. It is now on the governor's desk. We're expecting it to be signed this week. And if you remember, this includes plain language noticing and messaging from ESD. That will be a novelty. And also a required explanation, clear explanation for any decisions or denials that are made by the agency, including the facts and the reasoning of the case. That's very often missing from the current notices. Training program for adjudicators to have a kind of a reserve force in case of recession or an economic pandemic emergency like the one we have now, and an expanded data dashboard that would give us regular updates on the call volume coming in, the staffing for the call receipt, for the number of agents that are answering calls for employers versus the number who are answering calls from employees, and other possible things that the agency is asked to explore, which would include automatic triggers once certain call volumes or hold times are reached for adding more staff, and also possibly manual notices where notices are found to be incomprehensible, and they're waiting on the IT system to get caught up. So those are all expected this week. We will keep you posted when that is signed. The ESD announced that there is a new waiting week policy going into effect. That the waiting week is the normal week without benefits that you go through after you apply, after you claim benefits. That's been suspended by federal subsidies since the pandemic started. But since January, it's been that suspension has been suspended. So the waiting week has gone back into effect. Now, a new rule will start to waive the waiting week again. So applicants will now be paid for that first week they're eligible. And anyone who is not paid for their waiting week for weeks ending January 9th or later will be reimbursed effective retroactively up until May 7th. 2021. So those checks, those deposits should be arriving in people's bank accounts this coming week. And we will, if this relates to you, the agency has asked that you check your alerts on their e-services account. That's going to stay in effect until further notices. In addition, there's a category of claimants that we've been very concerned about that we've been following. These were claimants who were potentially eligible for PUA benefits, but because of various issues with their regular benefit claim, they were held up from applying for PUA before the deadline, which was December 27th. So technically, that meant that they could not get, by some interpretations, that they could not get the benefits that they were owed, even though it wasn't their fault that their applications came in late. So now the agency is saying that some of those claimants will be getting notices regarding the request to backdate the start of their claim. Right now, the agency has said only backdating is only allowed through to December 6th, but many of these claims would go back much farther, back even as far as March 2020. So if you have requested a backdate, they've asked that you keep an eye on your e-services notices and follow all the instructions there. But that's going to be rolling out. So it will be a gradually rolling out policy. Not everyone will be addressed at once. At the federal level, there's some new, there's definitely a shift in the climate there towards overpayments and towards strict application of the rules for PUA and the rules for unemployment insurance, which have been causing a lot of overpayments, as most people know, over the last year, because some people were technically in the wrong program, had to be switched. And that led to some things like you receive more money under PUA than you would under regular benefits. So you're going to have to refund, you're going to have to pay back the difference. Now, because of some new policy at the Department of Labor, they've looked into this and they're trying to address, for example, that one situation where people had an overpayment just because of the difference between the benefit program they were in and the one they were supposed to be in. So those amounts should be being refunded. That's the plan. At the federal level, they've said that those benefits were clawed back in error. And there are other categories of benefits too, where the overpayments should not have been imposed. And the agency is requiring, the Department of Labor is requiring that the Employment Security Department notify people that they may have erroneously paid an overpayment that they weren't, they shouldn't have, because they should have been waived. However, it's going to take quite a while to get caught up on these refunds. And Department of Labor is estimating it may take a year to get the refunds actually paid back. And that in some quarters is estimated to be over optimistic. So we've seen a lot of delays. This is one thing, though, that we can definitely say there is a change in the winds at the Department of Labor in how the rules are being interpreted, and it's much more forgiving environment. And so this is all taking place in the context of what's happening at the national level, which is very close watch on the number of new jobs that are available, how much the economy is added. And this is regarded as a key test for how well the economy is doing, whether unemployment is going to be falling, whether fewer people need to be claiming benefits. So there was an estimate that there was going to be a million new jobs and more added over the last month. But the latest report, which came out Friday, said that there were only 260,000 new jobs added, and the unemployment rate rose slightly from 6% to 6.1%. So that was contrary to expectations. Of course, it's a lot better than it was a year ago, which was 14.8%, but still not recovering as fast as people hoped, given the spread of the vaccinations, the high percentage of people that have gotten at least one shot now, and the hope that the economy is picking up. Some commentators said this might be one of the most disappointing job reports of all time. But there is a strong expectation that things will improve, especially as they're expecting to have they're hoping to have 70% of the populace vaccinated by July. And in the meantime, they're expecting, there are other factors that have contributed to a negative jobs report. It could be that the labor participation rate is higher. So that means there are more people looking for jobs. And wage growth has been a little bit more than expected. So those are good signs. And there is a strong expectation that this won't be the last word on the economy, that there was such a severe economic collapse, it would be unrealistic to expect a very rapid recovery. It's important to mention that there's a mythology going around that employers the job recovery is falling short because employers can't find laborers. And to an extent, that it is true that there are shortages, but part of it, remember, is because there are more people now participating in the labor force, and there are fewer jobs available for them. But in addition, there's the safety factor that many workers are causing many workers to resist going back to a workplace they feel has not really kept up with the measures needed to ensure worker safety. So that's definitely a factor, especially in very high customer contact industries like restaurants. For example, one owner said, this is the Greyhound Bar and Grill in Los Angeles, "I haven't been back because I can't really trust any restaurant owners to provide a safe environment for their employees." Now, in Washington State, we're luckier than many states because we have SB 5061, which ensures that if you are in a high risk category, whether because of your age or because of other vulnerabilities that you have, or if you live with someone who's of high risk, then you can refuse to return to a job based on worker safety, as long as you can work at home, as long as you're available for work at home. So that won't help everyone, but it does help quite a lot of people who are not lucky enough to live in Washington State. So we do have some better aspects here, and we can contrast our situation with that of Montana and South Carolina, because kind of falling for this myth about no one wants to work, the states of Montana and South Carolina have decided that unemployment benefits are too high, largely because of the $300. Remember, last year it was $600, the extra add-on from PUC. So they've canceled that, even though that is money coming in from the feds. It's already been paid for, been covered. It's free money for their residents, but they don't want their residents to have it because they're worried that it is affecting their willingness to return back to work. So in Washington State, we don't show any signs of that particular mythology taking hold. There's strong consensus that people would rather work, the vast majority of people would rather work than struggle to get benefits, and that has not been an easy process over the pandemic era, as we've all been familiar with. So that's the news for this week.
I would like to add on the issue of the $300 added. We had a question from someone about when the 300 will end. They said that they heard it on a radio report recently that it will end in September. So, and do we know if that additional $300 with overpayment check will be ending, or what we can see on that? And
right now, it's scheduled to continue through September, so September 7th.
September. Do you think with the political climate being what it is, or the Congress and president, that they would extend that? Have you read anything about that in any from any sources?
Have not seen anything about that, because that's a pretty long period for compared to last year. If you remember, there were only 4 months of PUC because it was $600, but this year we're going to have several more months than that. So it's hard to predict at this point. I haven't seen much speculation about what will happen after September. There's a lot of optimism that it won't be as necessary because there will be an economic recovery. We'll see.
And while it's been extremely helpful to people in Washington State, especially people with lower incomes, we do have a higher benefit limit here. Our maximum benefit is over $800. In some states, the maximum benefit might be only $250 or $300 for anyone, including a higher income person. So our residents have a little bit of an advantage with a higher benefit rate. One thing I would like to just add to the presentation about notices of overpayment. We've been getting a lot of calls, people very upset. There's a lot of anxiety out there, a lot of stress due to overpayment notices. But I guess a pattern I'm seeing is that people will call and say, I have an overpayment, they want me to pay back, I don't know what to do. And when I call the person and I ask them to read me the notice, it says, you may have an overpayment, we have some questions, or you may have an overpayment, your issue is maybe redetermined. And so I'm just putting this out, just that it's important people read notices very, very carefully to see what it is. Unfortunately, the state is spending a lot of effort on these notices that say things like, we've made a decision in your case, and it may be one of the following, right? And you may appeal, which is kind of crazy because it doesn't really say what the decision is and whether it's for you or against you, but it says you may appeal. So people ask, well, should I appeal? My advice in general is don't appeal, but wait and follow your notices carefully. And when that next notice comes, if it's not in your favor, then you carefully read the notice and then file the appeal. Let's see here. We have a question about a pension deduction and a waiver. This person got a notice after getting full unemployment for a few months that their pension is going to reduce the amount of their overpayment, and they have reduce the amount of their unemployment benefit. So, and the question is, should we appeal all that? So, the unemployment system does not count certain kinds of income against the unemployment claim, but employer paid pensions is one thing that should be deducted according to the rules. I don't agree with this personally because it's based on past earnings, but be that as it may. The problem with the last year is that these pension issues have taken months and months to resolve and get processed. So people who provided correct information when they filed, and it sounds like this person did provide that correct information. They were asked if you're receiving a pension. Yes, they reported accurately. It took employment security months for them to say, oh, well, you know, your benefit amount should be reduced by a certain amount. Should they appeal? Well, yes, because the judge at the hearing may grant a waiver of that overpayment or may allow for a waiver, which is to not have to pay it back, even though technically you would not be entitled to the money. And the concept of waiver comes from the fact that it was not your fault and it would be a hardship to repay. So we encourage people to file for hearings on that, that the judge doesn't have any ability to change that rule or to make an exception, but they can grant some relief as far as overpayments go.
And just to add one point about the overpayments, if you were receiving PUA previously up until December, the overpayments were actually forbidden. Waivers of overpayments were actually forbidden for PUA. So that changed in December. Overpayment waivers are now permitted, and this is what one of the things that the state agencies are catching up on. And they're also retroactive back to whenever you became eligible, starting with the pandemic. So that's a very big deal for a lot of people who are on PUA. And if you fall into that category, should be helpful, maybe helpful to you.
Excellent. We have a question. Does the court ever find good cause for filing a petition for Superior Court review when the appeal is filed more than 30 days after the commission decision? Well, sadly, I can give you a clear, definite answer on that, and the answer is no. The court rules for filing an administrative appeal are 100% strict. There's no exception or good cause provision for late filing. This is in contrast to a good cause maybe for filing your unemployment appeal late, or a good cause for missing your unemployment hearing. If one was scheduled and you missed it, there may be good cause considered in those cases. But filing even 1 day late in Superior Court, it will be there will be a motion by the Attorney General's office to dismiss the case, and that will be granted by the court. Unfortunately, it's very unfortunate, but it shows the difference between court rules, whether it be federal or state court, versus administrative rules, which can be flexible or have some kind of flexibilities there. So bad news on that answer, I'm sorry. Another question, can a person claim Social Security disability and unemployment at the same time? Do you need to let unemployment know you are receiving Social Security benefits? This one is clear, but I want to give a long answer. Yes, you can receive Social Security disability and or Social Security retirement and get unemployment at the same time. But and you don't have to notify unemployment about that. But there is one concern that comes up, which is when you are claiming unemployment, you are part of the workforce. You are you had a job, you became separated, you qualify for the benefit, and you have to be able and available for work. And the seeking work provision is temporarily suspended, but you have to be connected to the workforce to get back in. And there are some cases where people who are receiving Social Security disability have disabilities which maybe prevent them from work full time or doing certain kinds of work, but they are able to do other work. So it's important that the unemployment office always be clear that you are able and available to do suitable work. You know, that to not communicate with the unemployment office that somehow you are completely disabled, because you wouldn't be disqualified from unemployment for the fact that you were receiving Social Security disability. That fact alone would not disqualify you. But if you were physically unable to work, that might disqualify you. And the same thing with retirement. A lot of people who are, quote, retired are working all the time. People need to work to make ends meet. And sometimes the word retirement is misinterpreted. So a person who may be, let's say they're 68 years old, they're receiving Social Security retirement, and they're working a part-time job. The part-time job ends, they get unemployment. They have to be able and available for new work. If they tell unemployment that, well, I'm retired now, they will be denied, again, not for the fact that they're getting Social Security, but for the fact that they're not in the workforce and they're not able and available to accept new work there. And is there anything else you'd like to add about those points? Anything?
No, you covered it. Availability is key.
Okay. We have a question here that come in, and this is a common question we're getting at our offices at the Unemployment Law Project. The person got a winning decision from a judge over a month ago with their unemployment overpayment, and they are still getting, they represented themselves, it went well. The judge said they don't have to pay back money, but they're still getting bills and overpayment notices. And on the ESD portal, it's still showing that they owe the money. What should they do? Well, we've been hearing that a lot of this, and that there's so many hearings now and so many decisions to be processed. They are way behind. They're weeks and weeks behind. I would monitor the situation closely. You can call your state senator and state representative and ask them to contact to contact ESD on your behalf, and even call the governor's office. I'm going to put the link for the Washington State Legislature, leg.wa.gov, and you could find the governor's office through the governor's website for email and phone numbers, and just say, you know, I won my hearing, give maybe the docket number of your case, and just say I've been getting notices and bills, and see if they would intervene on your behalf to contact ESD to make sure they stop and adjust it. I will add as a footnote, there's a possibility in some cases, although not many, that there might be another issue out there causing a problem with an overpayment, but that's something that should be looked into, because there's always a possibility of another problem. But these days, I think when people are getting those notices, it is generally because of the department's inability to process these things in a timely manner. And have you heard anything about that?
No, but I have heard, of course, delays are chronic and at all levels, whether you're filing your claim and not seeing any action, whether you're appealing, whether you're waiting for, whether your appeal's been sent to the Office of Administrative Hearings and you're waiting for a hearing date, all of those delays are happening. It doesn't hurt when you contact your legislator to throw in a mention that you would really like to see assurances that there are adequate staffing to handle these kinds of workloads. The system is supposed to flex when there are increased levels of claims, and we're seeing a lot fewer claims than we were a year ago. So there should be less of this happening. Unfortunately, it is very common. But don't forget, you have some influence over your legislator, and you can remind them that this is not a problem that cannot be fixed. It can be.
And the results have been mixed. People have talked to me, called me back and said sometimes contacting the legislator or the governor's office did help, other times not. That's why I would encourage people to call more than one. And there might be different staff members with different, let's say, levels of enthusiasm for helping people, or, but it's worth it, because you don't want to let this go for like a year, because if somehow it got lost in the system, I think the longer you wait, the harder it might be to get it unraveled. So it's good to act on it now, and waiting a few weeks is reasonable before contacting and things like this. So let's see, those are the end of the questions we see now. We will wait another minute or so if there's any additional questions. So if you do put them into the Q&A. And are there any other thoughts about any of these issues or questions you've been getting recently?
No, I just want to make one additional comment that, there were very significant subsidies given to businesses because of the high tax burden they're facing because of the pandemic and the impact on unemployment benefits. And it's taxation of employers in Washington state that covers the benefits. So everyone knows they're going to be hit, but the proportion of help that they've received compared to the proportion of help that the Employment Security Department has received to help claimants is out of whack. I mean, over $1 billion, $1.5 billion to business to help with their taxes. It would be great if we could see 10% of that amount go to beef up staff to help get to a more realistic level to handle the calls, to handle the claims processing, and to keep some of these problems more under control. So just making that additional point.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions. So I'd like to thank everyone for participating today. And thanks, Ann. And we will be back next week with more information about unemployment, and we will be able to take your questions. Thank you very much. Goodbye.